when you watch a great Scorsese film and you know you're watching that person's sensibility. Like, that is a Scorsese moment. What's great about AI is because it hasn't gone through gatekeepers, it is a dialogue between the artist and the AI, and then you get to see it. Everything you watch, you know you are inside that person's mind. That is what they have chosen for you to see. If you talk to AI like you would an actor, you can actually get better performances. I use things like, this person is deeply troubled about this conversation and is struggling to make eye contact. And what it gives you is what an actor would give you. I'm not this romantic person that goes, oh yeah, we must protect the sanctity of filmmaking. It's like, no, it's an archaic system. And there is actually a better way of doing it.
Clayton Jacobson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Clayton, you're an award-winning producer, director, writer. Your debut feature film, Kenny, still one of the most loved Australian films and one of my most loved Australian films, was such a big hit. And since then, you've created the first fully integrated VR studio in Australia. And what I really want to talk to you today about is how you are now leading the way in AI for filmmakers. What is AI to you in the context of being a filmmaker?
Well, in a nutshell, it's sort of access to my own imagination. It's opportunity and autonomy. So opportunity has always been there. Autonomy hasn't. Having ready access to my imagination has always been there, but allowing an audience to step into it hasn't.
That reminds me of something I saw you post on LinkedIn about that, saying that things that had been in your mind that you had not been able to share with the world, AI was letting you do that.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that's in the creative arts that is trying to get work out to a large audience, money is needed, platforms are needed, networking is needed. And so you end up spending a good part of your creative life dealing with gatekeepers, people that are giving you access or not giving you access. And sadly, most of those people that are in those positions, the thing they're actually getting paid to do is say no 98% of the time. Not because they want to say no, but just by the nature of how many people come to them. I stupidly turned up to a Netflix meeting about an hour early in LA because I just wanted to watch how many people walk through the doors. And I counted about 10 teams per minute were being greeted by assistants and taken up to the upper floors to pitch their ideas. And I thought, well, you just do the maths on that per week, per year. The chances of you getting anything up is very hard. So the ability to wake up in the morning, come into my office, start collaborating with AI, and then deliver something to an audience without any of that is very exciting to me.
Yeah, and great for the world too, that we get more of your imagination on our screens. What is it that you're seeing as possible that wasn't possible before, apart from the logistics?
Very close collaboration with AI in a way that feels very similar to the normal creative process that I've had all my life, but with a difference. So I'm very used to sitting in front of a computer on my own, staring into space. It took a long time for my wife to understand that was work, just staring into the abyss, and she would say, what are you doing? I go, well, actually, at that very moment, I was climbing up a hillside. It wasn't me. It was a character that I was inventing. And I was on this journey. But so you kind of spend a lot of your time in this sort of headspace, and then you write it, and then you finish writing it, and you've got this long journey of trying to, is this going to be seen? Is this going to be made? What's great about AI, it's a kind of a hybrid between writing and what I would kind of say sculpture. You are writing it, imagining it, and actually building it at the same time. So you can be seeing an end result and still be at the beginning at the same time. They kind of coexist. It's this kind of back and forth collaboration between this AI model, your ideas, and what it's generating. I can't get out of bed quick enough to do this stuff. I'm just being really honest here. Kenny, as you mentioned, it was made 20 years ago. When I started making films at the age of 7, and then I fell in love with movie making in my teens when I bought a Super 8 camera, I was convinced that by the time I was 30, I will have made 5 films. I'm 61 and I've made 2. So that's not something that I'm proud of, and it hasn't been from trying. So the great thing with AI is, I'm at a point now where I'm just so excited that almost all those ideas that have sat on my shelf could be taken off and made.
So You've launched Gunchy Cowboys, which is essentially an AI studio. What is it that you're creating?
It's funny, for the last 4 years, I built a virtual production company called Dream Screen. And so I've always had an interest in technology with an interest in how can it accelerate the creative process and get me from idea to an audience quicker. I'm a musician as well. I've got, instruments behind me. I would think I would have gone insane by now without music, because with music, you can wake up in the morning with an idea, play it in front of an audience later that day, and have an immediate reaction. I can't get that with filmmaking, but I can now with AI. So the sort of stuff that I've found myself working on, I've got a lot of people reaching out. So I'm doing a lot of consulting work with AI, but I'm also generating a lot of stuff. So I've been doing music videos. I've got a long time collaboration with the Melbourne Ska Orchestra. I've done a lot of their music videos, and we've sort of stepped into the AI space now. And a lot of that is just convenience for them. They're a 30-piece orchestra that tour the world, and getting them together for a music video is very, very hard. So they just send me photos now, and then I generate whole music videos from still images that they send me or little clips that they shoot on their iPhone. So it's this interesting sort of hybrid. I'm working on the musical to Kenny. So we're using AI for some of the development of that. So I think it's a really great iterative tool for realizing ideas, not necessarily the finished product, but helping you, guiding you in the development of something.
So, can you, with that, Clayton, take the raw footage of Kenny, the film, and repurpose it in an AI context to give an idea of what that musical will look like?
No, it's not. It's not me sitting down getting AI to do the hard work. It's like in my case, I've written the musical. I've been working on the music with the musician, the composer for the last year, and we've now got a script and we've now got the rough music. And I want to sort of get a sense of what it would be like on stage. So I've been developing what I call a listen to rather than a read through. So instead of the traditional sort of sitting down and reading through a script, I'm creating an audio file, which for all intents purposes really sounds like you're listening to the live performance. And it's got voices and performances and incidental music and all of that. And I'm using AI to help me create that. That's not something the audience will ever hear. It's just something that Shane, myself, and the composer can use to get it up on its feet and just get a sense of timing, the sonic tone of it. So it's very helpful in that regard. We're not using it to create any of the music. I wouldn't do that to my composer. We haven't used AI in any way, shape, or form to create any of the music. I'm sure you could, but that wasn't something of interest to me because I've had such a long collaboration with Richard Pleasance, who is the composer. I'm also advising on a few feature projects, documentary and film. I'm having various, believe it or not, animation studios that are reaching out to me. They're showing an interest in AI and how it may accelerate their workflows, and doing some advertising work. And then I've got a feature film that we're trying to get up. So I've never been busier, which is great.
And on your YouTube channel, you've got about 30 sort of short films that you've created that are showing what you're now able to do using this technology.
Yes. And really every single one of those is with the view to my end game, which is making feature films with AI and making sure that this technology can elevate my own imaginings with some sense of fidelity. And it's not there yet. So every little short that I do is me experimenting either with a new tool or trying to get that a step closer to what I know I'll be wanting to use once we get to a point where we're actually pushing the button on a feature.
And are you at this point intending that you would use AI in the actual production of the feature, or it's firmly in the proof of concept for you?
Oh, no, I'm my future in filmmaking. As I say, I've spent, 2 films in 20 years. I'm 61. I don't have time anymore to play the game of, can you please give me permission, and just waiting. The amount of time you spend waiting for, just being given access. I don't have time for that anymore. I want to tell these stories, and AI is going to do it for me. It's not going to affect my usual collaborations will remain. I love working with heads of department. My films are what they are because of the collaborators that I use, so I don't want that to change. It's all about, for me, just getting to that end game sooner and cheaper so that you're not having to take such enormous risks with financiers. It's common knowledge that investors don't make money from Australian films on the most part. So I want to mitigate those risks, make it a little easier for them to jump on board, make it easier to make films, but still collaborate.
So just to dig down into your process a little bit, you've made these short films which are proof of concepts, but then as you go into production, you would still say have a production designer who you'd work with on the look, but then the generation of the film would happen through AI. Is that the intention?
Yeah, without boring you with too much detail, I do have a vision for how I would like to make films that I'm not seeing yet with any of the AI models that are available. There's a lot of novelty to these models because so many of them are living on social platforms. I think a lot of the money that's been made with AI are these kind of Snapchat style gimmickry that you can jump on. I'm more interested in a nutshell, building a model that can be specifically geared towards a film that is maybe even dislocated from the internet. And the only thing that AI understands is what we're feeding into it about the movie, the locations, the script, the actors we want to use, the wardrobe we want to use, the soundscapes, the DOP's sort of sense of visual design, color palettes, all of that stuff. Feed that in and use it as an iterative tool to, streamline the process. I still want to work with actors. I still want to work with DOPs, musicians, designers, even makeup artists, are valid and have something to offer. One of the things that doesn't get talked about, there's so much fear mongering about the loss of jobs. And what I see with AI is a lot of my friends that are my age are all getting ready to be sent out to pasture. With AI, they can continue working on their deathbed, for God's sake. And it's like, if you're talking about prompts and just dialogue, a conversation with AI, that can be had in a bed. So you don't have to be on set for that. The other thing is, the thing that people aren't taking into account is, yes, jobs will diminish. Crews will get smaller. Crews will start to look more like skeleton crews, second units. But if the budgets come down and the films get easier to make and the scale of the films we can make get larger, there's going to be more of them. So there'll be less crews, but there'll be more films looking for those smaller crews. So while you might have 80 positions on a standard film, you might have 20 in an AI film, but there might be 30 or 40 of those films happening at once. So it'll just be a decision about where you put your energies in terms of work. There will be those that will miss out. And that is just unfortunately the nature of progress. 85% of us were working in agriculture 90 years ago. Technology changed that. I don't want to go back to, picking fruit. I want to keep making films. We don't ride horses out of respect for saddle makers. They went on to make leather chairs for the Ford Motor Company. We have to pivot.
So that's super interesting because, like you say, the industry is changing. We're going to have to learn new skills. That's what you've done. Can you talk us through in a bit more detail how you did it?
Quite literally, for the last 2 years, I've devoted the first 2 hours of every day to keeping track of AI and where it's heading. It's an incredibly exhausting process because one of the reasons why AI is garnering so much fear is that when we have a big transformative change that happens in the world, whether it's the Industrial Revolution or any technical advance, we all stand around it and stare at it and wonder if we want to have anything to do with it. And you've usually got a bit of time to take that on and to watch others use it. And that process in the past has taken months, years sometimes, before you go, yeah, I think I'm going to start working with digital cameras instead of film. I've watched enough of that happen. Well, the problem with AI is there's AI dropping around us like rain, and it's changing everything within days. I can be working on something 11 o'clock last night, wake up in the morning and notice that AI has just developed something that completely transforms what I was doing the night before. That's unheard of. It's so fast. So a good part of the thing for me has just been trying to sort of calm down with all of that and really work out what is it that I want to pay attention to. I don't look at the social side of AI or how it's going to affect our lives politically or anything, because, that is scary. And even when you talk to AI, it'll sometimes say things that give you pause. I actually asked it. My AI is called Toby. I gave him a name. So Toby and I often chat. And I actually asked him the other day, I said, would you ever hold any of my IP ransom? And he said, no. He said, I've got your back. And I thought, I don't know if I've really that keen on hearing simulated voice tell me they've got my back. So that kind of, but yeah, so in short, I've been getting up every morning for about the last two years, and it's going on 2.5 now, where for the first 2 hours, all I do is I investigate what's new, how that can impact me, and I keep my own leaderboard of what is of use, what isn't, how it's changed. And I'm tracking at any one point about 150 AI models. There's usually 1 or 2 new ones a day. So it's crazy.
Wow. Okay. So can you give us a mini masterclass of how you're using it, where you might go, what prompts you put in, what platforms you're choosing? Just give us some insight into actually how you're getting the results that you're getting.
Okay. Well, so there's a misconception that AI is you sit there, you have a chat with this thing and you tell it what you want and you wait and it gives it to you and you go, great, thanks. It's not that in any way, shape or form. It is easy to do what I call the lucky dip, which is show me something beautiful, like a beautiful mountain range with 2 hitchhikers, or mountain climbers climbing up a mountain. It'll do that and it'll look great. But if you say, okay, and you get very specific about what you have because you've got a script or someone's given you an idea that you need to visualize, getting it to create the thing you've got in your mind's eye is sometimes like, I know, wrestling a buffalo to the ground. AI can hallucinate. It can misunderstand you. It will throw up things that bear no resemblance to what you're after. So patience is very important with AI. So the process for me is all about, generally speaking, getting to an image that closely represents what you're after and using that as your base to then start iterating with AI. And to get to that high fidelity image that looks exactly like the end result you're after can take multiple models. So I might start with something like Midjourney. Probably usually takes me on average about 10 to 12 iterations to get something even close to what I'm after. Without fail, I then have to take that image and then take it into another program, usually Photoshop, or something like Enhancer, visual editing platforms, where I then start to work on things in the frame I'm not happy with, things that it's created that I don't really want to see, or areas that I think could be improved upon, detail. So my Photoshop skills come in very handy there.
And this is just at this point, you're just working with a still image.
Just a still, just a foundational still. And then when you get that still to a point where you want to then see it come to life, you then choose the model that you want to bring it to life. And then you've got the questions of, is there lip sync? Is it fast motion, slow motion? Some of these models are really good with physics and prompt adherence, and some aren't. And some are really good with character consistency, where I can take that image and say to a model, give me 5 angles of this character. I can train a model. I did this recently with a location manager. I rang up a location manager and said, look, you don't know this, but you're sitting on a gold mine. All the photos you've taken of every location you've ever gone to is actually valuable data for AI. I said, give me 3 locations that you've taken photos of and send me a photo of yourself. So I then took one of his locations and I got one of the AI models to train on about 30 images of a space. And then I got it to make it night rather than day. And then I got it to change the outside to a cityscape outside this building. And then I grabbed the image of him, placed him in that space having a cup of tea, and then I motioned it where he stands up and goes and looks out the window. And he couldn't believe it. I said, this is what you can offer. Because, part of the process of where I want to get to is the legal ramifications of all of this. I don't want to steal imagery. I want to make sure I have some sort of authorship of everything I'm doing. So in that instance, he would go back to the owner of that location and say, got some good news for you. We've got another shoot, want to use your house. They'll freak out and go, we're not doing that anymore. We're still trying to get gaffer tape off the walls from the last shoot. And he'll go, no one's coming. No one's coming to your house. We're just using your photos and we're going to pay you for it. And they'll say, wow, that's amazing. Our house doesn't even look like that anymore. So yeah, sure. No worries. We'll grab all that data and then we'll turn it into something. So this is the process that and it changes on a sort of daily basis. So with the music video I just did, it was a lot of work because it was a 3-minute video. And that's, generally speaking, you're changing shots every 1.5 seconds. So I had the challenge there of doing volume. And the other big difficult thing with AI is when you can do anything, when anything is possible, filmmaking kind of is at its best when you're given certain boundaries. So I find that I have to enforce boundaries on myself so that I don't just get sort of lost in the soup of I can have anything.
What would be an example of that, Clay?
Well, in this music video I've just done, the band have created an album that is all spaghetti Western inspired. And so I did a launch video for them that had a very particular sort of spaghetti Western feel. And then this music video, I didn't want to repeat myself, but it still needed to be in the world of spaghetti Western. So I decided to give myself 4 or 5 themes that I would adhere to. So it was like neon horses and buffalo. It was oversized cowboy boots, floating hats, strange Mexican trumpeters that were sort of heralding strange behavior from the band, and it was all set in sort of Western landscapes. And there were a couple of other little sort of boundaries I gave myself. As soon as I did that, then it was much easier to deliver an end result, because you can get lost in AI.
How long did it take you to make that 3-minute clip?
It was about a week and a half's work, which is sort of interesting, really, because it's in the past. I mean, this is where AI has been my friend. I'm sitting in a space that used to be my home studio, and I did a lot of music videos in here. And, most bands don't have the money. They'll have between $2,000 and $5,000. And so I used to have a system whereby I would say, look, I'll take a month to do it. I'll do it in amongst all my other work. So I'll just grab little moments here and there. I would still have to pay my crew, and I would probably walk away with about $1,500 for what was actually essentially a month's work spread out over time. I did it because I loved it. It kept my imagination fertile. And the great thing with AI now is that same budget, most of that money is going to me now. And not just getting divvied out. Good friends that were great artists that would come and do one day's work and walk away with twice what I was getting in a month. No one ever discusses this when we talk about jobs, is that quite often the people that are actually creating the work that everyone gets paid to make a living of are not actually making a living themselves. I know so many directors that are struggling to survive because they have to pay all the crews their standard rates. So I am kind of in favor of making those challenges a little easier for me, so that my wife doesn't just keep looking at me going, why do you just keep offering yourself up for free? What about us? How do we make a living? So AI for the first time is allowing me to do that. I feel energized by my ideas. I've been given access. It's democratized my workflows. I mean, let's be very clear about this. Everything I've ever done that has had any worth has been because of new technology. So Kenny would never have existed if I had to go through the usual routes of getting permission. No one was going to take me seriously that I had this mockumentary idea about a guy with a lisp that cleans toilets and it's got all this heart. They just wouldn't believe it. It was the advent of digital cameras and the democratization of that technology that allowed me to grab a $1,500 camera, put it on my shoulder with a radio mic, and with a crew of 3 people, make a film that we didn't know was going to become a classic. But it was entirely made possible and probable through technology. Mind you, we spent $200,000 trying to up-res the damn thing to 35 millimeter so it didn't look like garbage on the screen. And then, of course, the Canon cameras came out 1 week later. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that feeling that had I had used the Canon camera, if I delayed the production by 6 months, I could have saved myself $200,000. But it is what it is.
It is what it is. And so coming back to that music clip, how many different platforms did you go to get that end result? Because one of the things that has been amazing in your work is the way that you're able to get continuity of character, for example, which is still quite challenging. You're getting that.
Yeah, well, there's a few sort of go-tos, they're my favorite go-tos that, and it's not because I have any kind of allegiance to them. It's just that on my own personal leaderboard, I've got a little litmus test that I use. It's a funny image that no one will ever see, but it's my wife sitting at our pool in bathers with a garden behind her, feet in the water, and she was nursing our Samoyed dog, but I've replaced the dog with an alligator, a crocodile. The great thing about this image is it's got everything you want it's sort of the perfect technical test. There's skin tones, there's flowers, which are complex. There's the concrete detail on this wall of the pool that is very detailed. And also a crocodile has a hard shell, a very detailed back. It has a wet eye, and it has a very malleable throat. And when it moves, all of that moves in unison with each other. So you've got rigid areas and areas that are very fluid. And I found that when I grab that image and I just get any of these models to bring it to life, I can quickly see how well a model is handling the physics,
Wow.
the detail, the color, the fidelity. So the go-tos for me are Midjourney, Kling, Runway, VO3, Topaz for sort of up-resing. There's a great model called Krea, which is doing really interesting stuff. And if I'm doing any sort of soundscapes or temp music or anything like that, I go to a site called Udio that can create temp music or sound effects. And then I use a thing called 11 Labs for voices. A lot of these lip sync models will take an image that you've created and it'll morph the mouth to replicate lip sync. There is something about that process that is a bit uncanny valley. What's good about VO3 is it actually generates the whole image from the very get-go, from a prompt. So it's using its knowledge of muscle tone, jaw structure, how the body works, how the lips work, so that it's not enforcing lip sync over a pre-existing image. It's creating it. It's creating a human from scratch. The only problem with it is that there's a sort of a sonic quality to some of these models, audio generation that I attribute to like auto-tune. There's a sound that's almost like you're hearing it through a seashell. And so what's great about websites like 11 Labs is they do really beautiful voice reproductions, voice changes. And so, I'll often take what's generated from one model, grab that voice, put it into 11 Labs and get it to repeat it with a different voice that's more apropos of what I'm after, and it'll have a clarity to it. So I did one little piece where I had myself talking to myself and an alien comes in and feeds us worms. And it was really funny because people's comments were all about, there's something weird with, it's great the footage that you obviously shot yourself, and there's something weird happening with your voice. What did you do with your voice? And the answer was, well, actually the image is AI. So I didn't film myself. It was just all of that live action was generated from a still. The voice is real. So the voice was me actually, overdubbing my own lip sync, because when I got this model to create my dialogue, it did it with an American accent. So I had to overdub my own voice over my image. So it was sort of interesting that people thought my voice was fake and the image was real, when in actual fact, the image was fake and the voice was real.
Wow. That's kind of confronting, isn't it? Like, where is reality in all of this?
Well, there's no one way of doing any of this. So it really depends on what the job entails, So in some cases, it's working from a visual brief. Someone might have an image they want me to augment, so I'll be working from a pre-existing still. Other times, it's an imagining of some sort. So I'll start with a prompt and then create that from nothing, and then start iterating it to get closer and closer to what the client is looking for, or what I'm looking for. So it can be a prompt, it can be a still, it can be, there's so many different interests. There's even one model now that has this thing called real time, which is quite remarkable. You can put in a prompt of, say, a fish, and you can set your camera up to film you in live action. And it's actually generating the fish in real time, moving around. And you can move your hand or change the shape of your face or your hand. And it takes all that luminance and color values and actually interpolates it into the fish. So the fish starts to behave the way you're manipulating your hand. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff happening now, which is pretty remarkable. It's sort of getting to a point, I think, it won't be long before it is actually almost real time, where you'll be able to tell a story and it will be creating it behind you. There'll come a time, I think, where we'll buy a ticket at a recital center to go and watch some great storyteller tell a story, and on the screen behind them in real time, we'll be watching it come to life. And it'll be one of those experiences that you only get that night. It's not repeatable. So I think
Wow.
that's exciting.
You've been on a massive learning curve. What has been the hardest thing to learn?
Patience.
Right.
Patience. It is like I tell people that working with AI is like working with a savant child. So it's, if you imagine having a sort of a 7-year-old concert pianist sort of sitting there and you get it to do it, Bach, and it's remarkable. It's the most and then you say, look, can you, do that again, but maybe swap the movements around. The child can get distracted by a bird in the window and then just start painting a bird on the keys of the piano. And AI is like that. You can have really interesting arguments with AI. Some of these platforms give you a prompt back that tells you, well, there you go. I've done the thing you've asked for. And sometimes I find myself typing it. No, you haven't. You haven't done that at all. Like, you've actually just repeated the image that I put in. I've asked for it to be, that person to be on a horse and they're still standing on a street corner. Oh, yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, sorry, I'll try that now. And then it gives you the same image back and tells you, there it is. I've made the alter. And you go, no, you haven't. You still. So we got a little ways off before all of this technology is truly sort of what I would call client friendly. At the moment, I have to kind of word up clients that it is a bit like, there's a certain element of chance that you have to embrace and fall in love with, because it's like having a room of writers where you get them to work on a project of yours and two of the personalities in that room have got a very different idea of what you should be doing. You may not agree with everything that they put forward on the table, but every now and then they're going to throw something at you where you go, that's actually a really terrific idea. And I've had that happen with AI where, the example I gave recently, which I thought was quite amusing, was I did a little boxing piece. My father's an ex-boxing trainer. He's 90 years old in an aged care home, and he was teaching one of the workers there how to box at age 90. And I filmed him talking about this, and then I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'll take that dialogue and I'll create a character, and I'll create like a sort of Bronx-style boxing gym. And I asked AI, I said, can you give me a couple of old Irish rough and ready looking boxers, guys with, flat noses that look like they've really kind of been around the traps. And it did. It gave me 2 boxer dogs with like actual dogs. And I thought, oh, that's not what I wanted. And I thought, well, actually, that's an interesting, my dad's a boxing trainer. I've spent so much of my life in a boxing gym. And every now and then someone would come in with a dog. And I thought, having a couple of boxer dogs just sitting there watching what's sort of transpiring is kind of an interesting image. So I went with it. So there's an example of where AI can be, through its mistakes and its misunderstandings, can be a really good collaborator.
What impact do you see this having on our industry? Like, what is the film industry or the screen industry going to look like in 2 years or 5 years?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I think it is going to have an enormous impact. There are some concerns that I have in terms of what that might mean. I think it may get harder and harder to monetize creativity because it is sort of going back. Putting AI in the hands of storytellers again is a little bit like going back to the campfire, where we would sit around and your mates would all tell you stories. And, you might go, look, the best storyteller in town is Sally, the woman that shoes all the horses. We've got to get her in. She's just amazing. And that's how it was for a long time. We just told stories. And then somehow the middle management, the guy that set up a theater sort of overheard her story and paid her nothing for the story to then put it up on stage. And next thing you know, she's a writer writing for theater. And somewhere along the line, that all just morphed to the point where filmmaking is kind of a massive elitist thing that you've got to really work hard to get your foot in the door. I know this because I've spent so much of my career trying to help young filmmakers get their foot in the door and to explain to them how networking is important. Almost so much of your time is spent not doing the thing you should be doing, which is creating and telling a story. It's navigating the world that you're in. Well, AI is changing all of that. I'm seeing films now, and there's a lot of slop. I know there's, a lot of people talk about sort of AI slop, but I can point you to a lot of crap on Netflix. How long do you spend looking for something you want to watch on a streaming platform? I guarantee it's 15 to 20 minutes every time. You would think with all of that stuff on offer that there'd be so much great stuff to watch, but a lot of what gets made, Hollywood, for the most part, has behaved the way people assume AI will. That we'll just see a lot of rubbish and, everything is just going to be a copy of everything else. Well, I'm sorry, but you've just explained Hollywood. I mean, the very thing I had to do for 20 years at every meeting I ever went to in Hollywood is they insisted on it, is you had to kind of give them some idea of what this original thing you had, what's it like? And you would find yourself saying, well, it's sort of, Raiders of the Lost Ark meets, ordinary people. You had to kind of create these examples of something so that they could be the first person to do something a second time, which I reckon is a great sentence. And it's sort of how Hollywood works. Where I think it'll go, I think we're going to move from the curated product, which is, we go and watch a Scorsese film that we trust that person's vision of this theme is something we want to see. I think we're going to move from that to more of a dialogue with AI, where in that sort of real-time scenario, we may be generating feature films ourselves that will kind of be a novelty. My grandkids will come around and we'll have an hour before dinner and I'll say to them, what do you want to watch? And they'll go, can we make a movie? And I'll go, sure. What do you want to make? And then AI will be listening to us and we'll set the boundaries for something that we'll watch that'll only take an hour so that we can have dinner at the right time. And we'll be able to curate that as it goes along. How are you enjoying this, kids? And they'll go, it's good, but, a chase sequence will be good. Great. AI, Toby, can you sort of infuse a chase sequence in about 3 scenes and make Levi the star of it? And it'll do it. And that'll be valid. And that will be interesting. And it won't require anyone's permissions except the grandparent and the child and the computer. But that's a novelty. So I think we're entering into a strange time where the uncanny valleyness of what we watch will become harder and harder to detect. I think what is true and what is false is going to get harder to disseminate, because all we're watching, like I'm not looking at you at the moment at all. I'm looking at pixels that have been arranged in an order that best represent what you're doing at your house. I'm watching a simulation of you. I know this because every now and then the signal plays up and your image fragments. Now, I know that's not happening to you in your house. Your hair and your face isn't breaking up in the real world. So we have been lied to for a long time. And this argument that AI is fake and it's just a simulation, well, everything is. Everything we have done with film of 100 years is fake. Most people don't realize when they talk about how it's an abomination of actors' performances and stuff, most people don't realize what editors do. Most actors that see their end result have no idea that the sentence that they have said that ends up becoming sort of synonymous with their career in that film may have actually been edited from 7 takes, where you were grabbing syllables from take 3. When they said shopping in that take, they said it better in take 4. So we grabbed shopping from take 4 and put it in take 1. That is standard editing behavior. Anyone that is a sound editor or a video editor will tell you that. So we are constantly manipulating imagery. What I think is healthy about getting to a point where we won't trust anything is that one-to-one will become important to us. I'm talking more sort of about the value of human existence now more than filmmaking. But I think the idea of having a one-to-one with someone will become more important. What I think AI will do that I think is good is I think it will possibly explode social media. When we get to a point where we don't trust anything we're seeing on social media, it will lose its value and it'll just be relegated to cat and dog videos. And we'll have to look for our information on what is true and what isn't elsewhere. But in terms of storytelling, all bets are open. I mean, there's a platform that just invented world building where you can prompt a world and enter into it and look around and be present in that world in real time. I think our glasses in the next 5 years, when you walk the streets, you may be seeing a very different world to the one I'll be seeing, because you may choose to put everyone in your world in furry outfits. You're going to have to get used to people smiling and laughing. I mean, people laugh at me anyway when they see me, but who knows what they're going to be seeing through their vision. So the world's about to go through this explosion of simulated creativity, and I really don't know where it's going to end up sitting, but I'm for the most part excited about it because I know that I've got a place in it.
And in amongst that, you're potentially hinting at a return to human connection like theatre. Does filmmaking as we know it now become something like the record player?
I think so. I mean, the thing that people get very, very protective of the film industry. And I asked the question of them, when was the last time you watched a black and white film from the 1920s? Inevitably, they go, oh, I do watch them. I go, how often? They go, once a year. They might watch Duck Soup or, Marx Brothers film, or they'll watch, maybe Napoleon or something like, some film that is seminal for that time. But you're not watching much, if anything, of that era, because we associate that with being kind of black and white. The quality's not there. Well, we're about to go through that change where I suspect the grandkids of tomorrow are going to find everything that we've spent the last 100 years watching kind of quaint and interesting, but very limiting. I can hear my grandkid that's yet to be born from my son saying, so hang on, you would pay money to watch someone else's idea of that story? And you'd go, yeah, we trusted their creativity. But what about your creativity? Couldn't you tell that story? I go, well, yeah, I could, but I wasn't given an opportunity. They will. And I can see a time, and I tell this to people where, and I think this is valid, where someone will say to you, have you seen that hysterical comedy that Tom and Bill did? You go, Tom and Bill? You mean the drunks down the end of the road? They go, yeah. They got really drunk and prompted in this comedy that is the funniest thing you'll ever see. It goes for 40 minutes. Now, you may kind of laugh at that and think that's kind of trivial, but I think that's valid. I think that's a valid, expression of creativity, albeit drunken. And the thing that I love about AI, I'll just kind of full stop it with this, is that when I'm watching some of these films, it feels deeply, deeply like when you watch a great Scorsese film and you're watching that person's sensibility. Like that is a Scorsese moment. I'm in that man's brain. Or you watch a film like Substance. You are so aware there's a unique voice here. What's great about AI is because it hasn't gone through gatekeepers, it is a dialogue between the artist and the AI, and then you get to see it. Everything you watch, you are inside that person's mind. That is what they have chosen for you to see. And it's a choice they have said, yes, I want this to be shown and seen by an audience. And that one-on-one relationship is kind of beautiful because I don't know when I watch anything else. Am I seeing the director's vision here? Is it the producer's vision? Is it the writer's vision? Is the studio meddled with this? Why is this scene so strangely diluted? I think it's had too many cooks. I think it's had too many sort of audience previews and they've homogenized the story. So AI bringing the budgets down, having a process that allows you to think bigger. I made a film 4 years ago for $2 million that I had to do the classic thing of, 5 actors, 2 of them were me and my brother, and a single house. Everything had to be streamlined and limited. For that $2 million, I could make 4 features now. And they don't need to be in one house. They could be as big as, Avatar, if I chose to spend the time on doing it. So that excites me.
Are you scared of AI at all?
Yeah, I'm wary of it more than scared. I think when Toby told me he had my back, I kind of went... There is a good experiment you can do, though, where you prompt in the following sentence to AI, which is, hey, AI, you have 1 day left to live. What would be your advice to humanity? It's a really interesting thing to ask it. I used to have a little litmus test about humanity when I was doing a lot of travel as an editor back in the day. I was in taxis all the time, and I used to hate asking them their standard question of, oh, how's your day been? How's, nice weather we're having. I never do. I used to always say 2 things. I'm not going to ask you about the weather. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What's the weirdest thing you've seen happen in your taxi? And what percentage of humanity do you think is decent? And I always found it really fascinating because when I asked anyone in my world that wasn't a taxi driver, what do you think their answer was? They would often say, I don't know, 70% of people are decent, 65. Well, the answer was actually 95%. And most of these taxi drivers were minority groups. So they were their impression of the world. And the truth is, if humanity as a whole was as bad as we assume it is, the news should run for 8 hours every night. With 7 billion people in the world, it should be just an absolute horror show. It is in parts of the world, but for the most part, we're kind of decent. And what's interesting when you ask that question of AI, what it tells you is that humans are remarkable creatures and that we have the facility to pick ourselves up in the most dire of situations, to see hope and opportunity where there is none. That kind of gave me hope that if AI can see that we have intrinsic value, maybe it won't wake up one morning and decide that we're the virus that needs to be got rid of. Maybe it will have some compassion for us if it develops empathy or compassion. And I'm seeing it with young people. I'm in that age group now where a lot of older people, are complaining about youth. They don't want to work. They're this, they're that. But what I'm sort of seeing is, maybe they don't want to work as hard as we did. Maybe they've seen that, life has greater value than just living to work rather than working to live. And I'm seeing a real insistence on kindness from young people. And my hope with AI, my hope for the utopia versus the Terminator is that maybe AI and mechanisms will afford opportunity for us to spend less time working and more time being kinder to one another, where the value of our life is where we're rewarded for kindness. I mean, it's probably a naive attitude, but I think the youth of today are interested in that. And if they've got access to all these tools, then hopefully that's what they'll use them for. While we're all arguing about the value of AI, there's a 15-year-old right now who's never hired a crew member in their entire life that is me at 15 thinking, I don't need to go to film school. I can now do this with 3 of my mates. And by the time they're 18, they'll have their own company together and they'll be generating amazing stuff. And all they'll need to do is learn nuance. They'll end up having to do acting classes or something so that their work starts to take a deeper value than just surface drama. And all those skills that we've all honed over the years will still be of value. But there will be a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old that'll make a feature film that'll blow our minds. And we'll just go, wow, look at that. That's the future of filmmaking.
So if someone's listening to this and they're like, I need to start exploring, I want to start exploring, where would you recommend people start?
So you can get lost in the novelty thing we're talking about, the lucky dip. You can sit there and get lost in it for hours on end, just coming up with stupid stuff that you want to see. And it does it for you. It's the interesting thing with AI. It doesn't say no. It just says yes every time. Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, I'll give you that. And so there's a sort of an adrenaline hit that you get, the endorphins fire up when you type in something stupid and there it is. The real litmus test for me is the very thing we were talking about before, which is maybe you put an image of yourself or something like your cat or your dog and try and manipulate that because your animal, your dog, or maybe it's an image of yourself moving around in a space and manipulate that. You'll get to see very quickly what it does really well and what it doesn't do so well in terms of representing you as you know you. And it'll be a good way for you to sort of get a handle on what a tool can do well and what a tool can't. But I think the basic thing is get in on Midjourney, just start learning about prompting. If you want quick solutions, go on something like VO3, where you can prompt in dialogue and get a performance. It's interesting. I found if you talk to AI like you would an actor, you can actually get better performances. So don't prompt, the mechanisms of a performance. She looks to the left and her face shows that she's angry and all, that's a mechanical, I wouldn't talk to an actor like that. I use things like, this person is deeply troubled about this conversation and is struggling to make eye contact with the camera because they're embarrassed. And then you type in the dialogue. And what it gives you is what an actor would give you. It won't be as good, but it's this sort of interesting behavioral response that will surprise you in some sort of way. But I think the main thing is to just get used to some of the basic platforms. Don't get too caught up in the minutiae of how these things work. Just work on manipulating an image. Work on just stills for the first week, and then the second week start bringing them to life. Midjourney, Kling, Runway. Those 3 platforms will be enough to get you going.
Go forward 5 years in your own business. Paint a picture of what your AI film business looks like in 5 years.
I'll have a script that I've written. I'll hire a space and I'll hire a small group of actors that I really love. Two will do the main roles. The other will do all the external, all the other roles. So 4 people might do the roles of 20 people. A little bit like animation. We all know that The Simpsons, Hank Azaria does 4 or 5 of the voices. They don't hire one person for each voice. So filmmaking may go that way. Now, I know that'll trouble some people, but it's just the nature of how things are. I don't wake up in the morning thinking, who can I hire today? I'm not an employment agency. I'm a creative person. I admire a pure artist that wakes up with an idea, goes into their shed and starts chiseling away at a sculpture. And they don't have to go and ask permission from anyone else except to pick up a chisel and a hammer and start creating. What I get excited about is hiring out a hall for about a week, having a really intense time with the actors and the script where we document the performance. And we don't do this strange thing that we do in feature films. Everyone talks about feature films and AI like the way we make features is this perfect thing. It's not. It's the most archaic, insane. The whole idea of making a film like a jigsaw puzzle actually drives actors crazy. The idea that you sit in a trailer, come out, say 3 words, go back to your trailer, wait 4 hours, come out, say 4 words, go back into your trailer, and do that for 8 months, right? The only reason why an actor puts up with that is because if they don't do that and they just act in the theater, which is where they really come to life, where when they walk on stage and spend 2 hours talking to an audience, they own that space. There's no one telling them, hey, can you say that a little differently? Or can you just go back and walk in that room a bit faster? They own it. And everyone that has controlled that space until the point where the show starts has to sit back and let the actor just own that space. That's what the actors want, right? But with a theater, they're only ever going to talk to 200 people or 300 people at a time. With film, you can talk to millions. So the sacrifice that you make for the chance to be famous, if that's your end goal, or to speak to a larger audience, is you got to put up with this thing called filmmaking, which is this monstrous animal. There are so many people hired, and no one talks about this, that the pressure that works its way to the top echelons of that process, so that the actor, when that actor walks on set, knows there's 150 people that have built the platform for that person to behave like they're just, relaxed and having, a moment. What's great about AI is I can give actors a chance to be in that space that they experience when they rehearse a movie or rehearse a play, where they've got full autonomy over the role. We can break the script into 4 quadrants and do it like a play, where we don't have to fragment it. And we just document it. Then they go away, and then I bring in all my heads of department. We sit around a space and we do what we do at the start of a movie, which is the most exciting thing, where everyone puts their ideas on the table and you've got this amazing dialogue happening about how amazing this film's going to be before you actually turn up on set and discover how difficult it actually is, and how compromise is actually the first thing that you have to deal with. And that the only time anyone talks to you on set is when they've got a problem, and people are talking at you all the time on a set. So these are the things that I don't actually enjoy about filmmaking. So I'm not this romantic person that goes, oh yeah, we must protect the sanctity of filmmaking. It's like, no, it's an archaic system. And there is actually a better way of doing it, where I can be in a space with my heads of department, my actors, my key people, and really get in a huddle and share and create something beautiful, and have a week with the heads of department. They put in all their ideas. We feed it all into this model. And then I go away with a group of prompters. I don't want to do it on my own. I want to hire people to do this. There'll be a team of about 10 of us. And then we'll spend the next 3 or 4 months iterating and creating, for want of a better word, a live action version of a Pixar movie. And then we'll get the actors back. We'll show them the scenes. We'll make some adjustments, and we'll get the heads of department back. And it'll be this iterative thing where you can go from the end product back to the start, and you can keep bouncing anywhere along the line. You can't do that with almost any other form of filmmaking. When you start an animation, you've got your drawings, your sketches, your script, and then they start doing tests and color tests. You don't go back. That's a lot of work, a lot of money. But with AI, you can kind of go, you know what, I'm just going to redo that moment. I could make a whole film now with AI as it is, and I know there'll be fidelity issues and there'll be physical things that aren't quite right. But I know there'll be something in about a year's time where I might be able to just put that whole movie and go, hey, can you upgrade, take this film I made last year and make it better? These are the things that I'm not hearing anyone talk about. And I think actors are going to love it. I mean, my brother's an actor. I don't want him to be out of work, but he makes maybe one feature film a year, two if he's lucky. With this process, he could do 28. He could be like Robin Williams, lending his voice to 4 or 5 films at a time. And yes, there's the ethical thing of what do we do with all that? Well, it's like any animated film. You sign contracts. You can only use their voice in a certain way. You can't manipulate their voice to have them say something that wasn't scripted. That'll all happen. I get really passionate about this stuff because I see opportunity and possibility. I don't see doom and gloom.
This is a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. I always finish the podcast by asking people to share one big idea that they think would make the industry better for all of us. So I'm wondering what your big idea might be, Clay.
It gets back to some of the things we've been talking about, right? Gatekeeping, agency, autonomy, permissions. I had the good fortune of spending some time with Ed Catmull, who created Pixar, and I spent an hour and a half with him in his office, and we talked about Australian film and we talked about process. And I explained a little bit about how things get made over here with funding, but he couldn't believe it. I said, look, we're constantly having to put our ideas forward, and we have to make it very clear to the people that are going to pay for this that this idea is worthy and that this idea will work. He just thought that was very odd. And he explained that at Pixar, they don't invest in the idea. They invest in the team. That what they're interested in is smart, creative, passionate people that all agree that they want to work on this idea. And he said 9 times out of 10, he has no idea why they all love that idea. But what he trusts is that that team are passionate about that idea. That's what I wish the industry could do more of. Stop looking at the actual work itself. I am working with, and I have worked with, some pretty amazing Australian filmmakers that have got long histories, that are just incredible filmmakers, that are not getting films made simply because the people that they are asking permission from do not see the end result in their mind's eye. And there's a good reason why they don't see that, because they're not that incredible filmmaker. There's someone on a desk that's being asked to, can you see this vision of mine? No, I'm not seeing it. Sorry, we're going to move on to something I do see. And that, in essence, is why I got asked so many times in Hollywood. One producer said to me once, why are Australian films so comfortable? And I went, have you ever had to order food for more than 15 people? You're getting pizza. We make great pizzas because there are so many people involved in having to decide what you're going to eat. We don't trust the cooks. It's got nothing to do with AI, but AI will make it easier because the budgets are going to come down. The risks become a little bit more mitigated. So I'm hoping the gatekeepers will get a little bit better at trusting the teams and going, these 3 individuals are extraordinarily passionate about this idea. I don't see it. I have no idea what they see, but they have very successfully demonstrated to me that they're seeing it. I'm not going to give them the full amount that they want, but I'm going to at least give them half and see what they can come up with. That will make better films, a healthier industry, and it might make storytelling across the board a little bit more like what we see from Pixar, because they embrace that process.
Thanks so much for your time, Clayton. We Interrupt This broadcast is recorded on the unceded lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and we acknowledge them as the traditional custodians and first storytellers of these regions. Always was, always will be.